Now, lean in close, because the stories the world tells you are often just the skeletons of the truth. You've heard of the hare and the tortoise, haven't you? A fast rabbit, a slow turtle, a nap, and a finish line. It sounds like a bedtime story for toddlers. But the version I know, the one passed down through the gray woods, is a bit more substantial. In the days when the trees still whispered secrets to those who cared to listen, there lived a hare named Swiftfoot. He wasn't just fast. He was a blur of silver fur and nervous energy. He lived his life at a frantic gallop, always looking for the next big thing, the next moment where the whole forest would stop and stare. He had 1,000 friends, but knew none of them, and his mind was like a library where all the books had been tossed into a blender, full of everything, useful for nothing. Then there was Barnaby. Barnaby was a tortoise of the old blood. His shell wasn't just bone and keratin. It was etched with the history of his ancestors, deep grooves that looked like the runes carved into an ancient cathedral wall. He moved slowly, yes, but when he moved, it was with a purpose, so quiet and so certain that the very earth seemed to firm up beneath his feet, as if the ground itself was glad to be walked on by someone who meant it. One morning, under a sky the color of a bruised plum, Swiftfoot stood at the edge of the shifting woods and stretched his long legs with the casual arrogance of someone who has never truly lost anything. "I'm bored, Barnaby," the hare declared, his ears twitching like antennae searching for a signal. "This forest is too slow, too quiet. I bet I could reach the ancient oak at the heart of the woods before you even clear the first brook. In fact, I'll give you a half-day's head start, just to make it interesting." Barnaby looked up slowly from the patch of clover he had been studying. His eyes were the color of polished amber, deep and unhurried, like two small suns that had decided there was no rush to set. "The shifting woods do not care for speed, Swiftfoot," he said, his voice low and steady as a river that has been running for 1,000 years. "They care for the direction of the heart. But if a race is what you need to find your soul, then I shall walk." The race began, not with a gunshot or a shout, but with a long, slow sigh from the wind through the treetops, as if the forest itself was saying, "Here we go again." Swiftfoot didn't wait. He was gone before the wind had finished its sigh, a silver streak vanishing into the green dark of the trees, his heart hammering a single, breathless rhythm. Faster, faster, faster! He wasn't running to the ancient oak. He was running away from the silence, away from the stillness, away from the uncomfortable feeling that if he ever stopped moving, he might have to sit with himself for a moment. And he wasn't entirely sure he'd enjoy the company. The shifting woods, you see, are a peculiar place. The paths don't stay put. The trees have a habit of rearranging themselves based not on the wind or the season, but on the character of the traveler walking among them. For a heart that is restless, the woods become a carnival. For a heart that is steady, they become a cathedral. For Swiftfoot, they became a carnival almost immediately. About 3 miles in, he burst into the Glade of Infinite Echoes. It was a breathtaking place, a wide, shimmering clearing where the air itself seemed to sparkle, filled with thousands of tiny, luminous insects that hovered like living stars. And they noticed him. The moment Swiftfoot entered, they began to buzz and shimmer in patterns that reflected his own image back at him. 1,000 tiny mirrors, all saying the same thing. "Look at you," they hummed. "Have you ever seen anything so fast, so graceful? The whole forest is talking about you, Swiftfoot. Stay a while. Let them see you." And Swiftfoot, who had never once in his life been told to slow down and be admired, stopped. He told himself it would only be a moment, just a quick rest. He deserved it, didn't he? He was winning, after all. He began to perform for the glowing insects, sprinting in dazzling circles, leaping over fallen logs, checking the echoes to see if they were still cheering. They always were. The echoes never got tired, never looked away, never told him he was anything less than magnificent. He forgot about the oak. He forgot about the race. He forgot, for a long and glittering while, that there was anything in the world beyond the sound of his own name being celebrated. Meanwhile, Barnaby had taken his first step. It was a heavy step, a deliberate step, the kind of step that doesn't ask permission from the ground, but simply trusts that the ground will be there. He wasn't looking at the glittering things in the trees. He wasn't listening for applause. He was reciting, quietly under his breath, the ancient words his grandmother had carved into the inside of his shell when he was young. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. The shifting woods, sensing the direction of his heart, arranged themselves into something resembling a long, honest road. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. But it was clear. That is, until he reached the valley of the low fog. It came without warning, a thick gray mist that rolled in from the north and swallowed the path whole. Barnaby stopped. He could not see the road ahead. He could not see the trees on either side. He could not, if he was being honest, see much beyond the end of his own nose. And in the fog, voices came. Not the flattering buzz of the glade, but something quieter and far more dangerous. The voice of doubt. "You're too slow," the fog whispered. "You know that, don't you? You've always been too slow. Swiftfoot is already at the oak. He's probably already on his way back. What's the point of finishing a race you've already lost? No one is watching anyway. No one ever watches the tortoise." Barnaby stood very still. He had heard these voices before. They were old acquaintances, not friends. He knew that fog, by its very nature, is temporary. It is not a wall. It is not a verdict. It is simply water that hasn't decided to be rain yet. He took one step forward, then another. He couldn't see the path, but he had walked long enough to know that the path doesn't disappear just because you can't see it. "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. The lamp didn't illuminate the whole road, just enough for the next step. And the next step was all he needed. Slowly, steadily, Barnaby walked out the other side of the fog, into a morning so clear and golden it almost made him laugh. Back in the Glade of Infinite Echoes, something had changed. The glowing insects had begun to flicker. Their praise, which had seemed so warm and so real, was starting to feel thin, like a coat that looks magnificent in the shop window, but does nothing against the cold. Swiftfoot had performed every trick he knew. He had sprinted every sprint, and the insects had cheered every single time, with the exact same enthusiasm, the exact same words, the exact same hollow shimmer. "Is that all you've got?" they buzzed, and for the first time Swiftfoot heard the question underneath the praise. He looked around the glade. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also a circle. He had been running in circles. And somewhere ahead, through the dark and the roots and the honest difficulty of the real woods, there was an ancient oak waiting at the finish line, not to applaud him, but simply to be there, solid and true, the way real things are. Swiftfoot ran, not with the frantic, hollow speed of before, but with something closer to desperation. He tore through the undergrowth, leaped the brook, scrambled up the ridge of gray stones. And then he saw it, the ancient oak. And sitting at its roots, shell gleaming in the afternoon light, was Barnaby. The old tortoise wasn't celebrating. He wasn't gloating. He was simply sitting with his back against the great trunk, eyes closed, breathing slowly, as if he had arrived not at a finish line, but at a place he had always been heading. Swiftfoot skidded to a stop. He stood there, chest heaving, fur wild, staring at the tortoise in a silence that felt enormous. How was all he could manage. Barnaby opened one amber eye. "I walked," he said simply. "But I'm faster than you." "Yes," said Barnaby, "you are. You are considerably faster than me. But speed is only useful if you are going somewhere." He patted the root beside him. "Sit down, Swiftfoot. The oak has been here for 1,000 years. It will wait a moment while you catch your breath." And Swiftfoot, for the first time in his life, sat down. Not because he had to, but because somewhere in the long and humbling run through the shifting woods, he had begun to suspect that stillness might not be the enemy after all. The ancient oak said nothing, but its roots ran deep, and its branches were wide, and the shade it cast was the kind that feels like a gift. "Now, the world is going to offer you 1,000 glades of infinite echoes, beautiful, shimmering places that will tell you exactly what you want to hear for exactly as long as you keep performing. And there will be fog, too, gray and cold, and full of voices that know your name and none of your worth. The lesson isn't that slow is better than fast. Some of you are Swiftfoot, and that's all right. The lesson is simply this: Know where you're going. Because a race run in circles, no matter how brilliantly, is just a very exhausting way of staying in the same place. Keep your eyes on the oak, kid. It's worth the walk. So what story do you want to hear next? Comment below and I'll choose a few for the next story time. Good night.